Who says crafting is a dying art? I'm finding crafters all over the Middle Tennessee area who make unique items that'll be passed down for generations to come. Welcome to HandMade Tennessee. I'm Kimberly Vance along with my special guest today, Tim Muscetta. Hi Tim, how are you?
Hi Kimberly, how are you? I'm fine.
Great, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I don't mind at all.
Well, great. Tim makes some of the most interesting art that you've ever seen. He carves stuff and he does chainsaw art. Is that what it's actually called, chainsaw art?
Chainsaw art, yeah, or chainsaw carving. Either way, it's known as both.
Wow. And here around the McMinnville area, you are quite a celebrity with some of your pieces. I know that you did the restoration on the downtown piece.
I did that.
And then also on the Greenway.
Yes, on the Greenway I did the raccoon family. If you're familiar with the Greenway, then you've probably seen it. It's basically some raccoon, I think they're called pups, climbing out of the of holes in the tree, and then there's a older cub or pup climbing on the side, and then there's a mom laying down on a big dead log, and a father raccoon climbing up another tree.
How cute. I'll bet that is just something else to be recognized and see your artwork when you go out places. It's bound to make you feel really good.
It's nice. I mean, it's nice to have. I've done some pieces even for Disneyland, so I've had my artwork recognized before, but I've never had a plaque before. And on the Greenway they have a plaque with my name, so that was kind of a neat thing to see.
That is very nice. Yeah. It's the small things in life that make
absolutely. You got it.
All right. Well, here is some of the work that you've actually brought to show us today, and it is incredible. I cannot believe some of these pieces. This right here is absolutely gorgeous. Now, this is wood.
Yes, that's wood. That's a piece of cypress from Florida, actually.
Wow. Now, do you go around the states and collect, or do you order, or when you're on vacation you find
sometimes
something?
I collect. Sometimes I'll go to the sawmill and I'll buy just raw logs if it's a rare piece. Like I use a lot of butternut, and I use a lot of basswood or lin. Now, lin and basswood is an expensive wood if you buy it already done at a wood specialty place, but it has to be dried. So I purchased some logs and had them cut to size, and then I would dry them myself, air dry them, which is actually the best kind of drying.
Now, what does that involve? Just leaving them?
Well, some people have kilns, and you can, which is just a big oven kind of, and they heat it up slowly and they dry it, and that speeds up the drying process. The wood is going to naturally dry anyway. The moisture is going to come out of the wood, and it's going to dry. If you don't have a kiln, and in my case I don't have anything that big, I have a smaller kiln where I can put a small piece, say about this size in it, but I can't put these big pieces. So I would stack them on the ground with spacers, wooden spacers in between, and then put a little heater near it and a fan to circulate the air, and wait 6-8 months.
Oh, wow. So it has to be completely dry.
It has to be at least to a 20%. You can carve it when it's wet. Like my chainsaw carvings, I do not dry. I mean, they're carved. But it's a natural process of the wood drying to what they call checking or cracking in the woods. Now, I've done some chainsaw carvings which would get some little, like this one here, would get a little hairline crack, and I've had customers call me upset, think it's going to split in half. And I tell them that no, that's not the case. And sometimes I'll tell them, you know, bring it back and I'll fill it after it's been there a season. Right. But if you take, especially if you take a wet piece of wood, like a chainsaw carving, and you bring it home and you set it by your wood stove, it's going to crack all up. Yeah. Going to get big old cracks in it. And sometimes they could be as big around as your finger. And then other times they'll be what I call spider cracks. They'll be just little tiny concentric rings that'll crack. And that's the moisture trying to get out of the wood. Since it dries from the outside first, dries, and then it splits and lets the moisture come out. Wow. You can limit that by putting a sealer on the ends of the logs. But it's still, once you carve it, once you open it up, you really can't do that. It's still going to do that.
All right. How in the world did you get interested in this? Because I don't assume that someone says, hey, I've got a chainsaw and I've got some wood, I think I'm going to make something.
Well, actually, that's funny you asked. That's an interesting story. I was living in Arizona, and well, ever since I was a kid, I always would see pictures of the West Coast and these carvers out there with a chainsaw carving a bear. And I've always had a special place in my heart for bears, and I wanted one. So when I was in Arizona, I would fly periodically to San Diego to see SeaWorld or something. I'd take my children there, and I'd be close, and I'd say, all right, I'm going to go out and get me a bear. So I'd go out and I'd look at these bears, and they weren't real cheap, and especially for that time.
Not a, we're talking about a wood bear, right? You didn't want a real bear.
No, we didn't want a real bear. Well, I would have liked to have had one, but we're talking about a wood bear.
A lot less dangerous.
I could buy them. I could afford to buy them, but I couldn't afford to buy another seat on the airplane to have it flown back or to ship it, because it would have to be shipped common carrier because they're so heavy.
Right.
Especially the wet ones. You know, when they're first carved, they're a lot heavier. They get lighter as time goes on. So eventually I moved from the Phoenix area to Northern California in the Sierras. And while I was up there, I thought, all right, great. I'm in California. I'm only 100 miles from the coast as the crow flies, but it's one of those places where you can't get there from here, you know?
Right.
So we had to drive all the way down to San Francisco and then all the way up the coast. It was about a 4-hour trip to get that 100 miles. So then I go out to buy a bear, and I see these bears, and now they're a lot more money. And I didn't want a little one. I wanted one at least your size.
Right.
So they were like $1,000, $1,200 for these bears, and I was like, I don't have that kind of money. So I would come back home depressed, and then I would save my money, and I'd have like $1,000 or $1,200 in hand, and I'd go back out there.
Then they go up again?
And no, well, they would be around the same price, but I couldn't find one that I liked well enough to part with all that money. So I thought if I'm ever going to have one, I'm going to have to learn to do it myself. So I went to the local Kmart. We didn't have a Walmart in town, and I bought a $99 McCulloch chainsaw. And I happened to be having a big old ponderosa pine tree that was being cut down in front of my yard, and I asked the logger to leave a piece. So I started carving on it. And my first bear took me 2 weeks and looked like a pig. Now I can do the same bear in a day. So, but I've done thousands of them since then.
Did you save your pig?
Yes, but it's actually, you don't know, come to think of it, I was building log homes too at the time. And I was building a log home in a town called Fullerton, which was just outside of LA. And we were building a log place for the Boy Scouts.
Right.
And the person that we were building the thing saw the bear, and he wanted it. I was like, all right, you can have it. I was impressed that somebody wanted it. But even today, I see some pieces that I've done years ago, and I scratch my head thinking why people bought them. But you get better. And I would get discouraged occasionally. I had a friend of mine, a mentor, and a very talented sculptor, American Indian named Rudy. And funny name for an Indian, right? But Rudy would tell me, you know, your best day is somebody else's. Your worst day is somebody else's best.
That's true.
And I would think of that every time I would get discouraged. And just practice makes perfect. That's really what it comes down to.
What a funny story. So your desire for a wood carving is what got it all started.
Right. And then from there, it's just different mediums. And different mediums means, you know, you go from wood to clay to stone to antler, pretty much anything in that range.
So here are some of we were talking about kind of how you get started on the wood carvings. So you actually, I guess, pick out the type of wood that you want to use. Which type do you prefer? I know you've mentioned several woods that you have here.
Well, there's certain woods that carve easier. Some woods carve easier when they're wet, like cedar carves very nicely when it's wet. But when it's dry, once you put the chisel to it, it'll big old split will come out of it. It'll take a big chunk of wood out. It's not what you want. Other woods carve nice when they're dry. Basswood is an excellent carving wood, especially for somebody that's learning and trying to figure out how to do it, because it's real. It's a real strong wood. If you've ever seen the little flat wooden magnets, you know, that you see in the craft stores, they're made out of basswood. Okay. It's harder than balsa wood. If you know, you've seen the balsa wood displays.
Yes.
They'll have balsa wood and they'll have basswood next to it, but subsequently it's an expensive wood.
Right.
But then other woods, like this wood, has a nicer grain. So when you finish the carving, like this piece is made out of basswood.
That is outstanding.
And that started out just like this, except that it was a larger piece, obviously. And once you get it, when you go to do the finish, the grains will show up a little nicer, and it turns out a little darker. If you can stain it, you can leave it a natural color wood. So butternut is a really nice wood for carving too. But I would suggest you know what you're doing a little bit more before you get to the butterwork.
And the more expensive woods like that?
Yes, it's an expensive wood, and it's a rare wood. Some people around here a lot of times will call it white walnut. Okay. But if you buy it from a specialty shop, you're going to pay through the nose for it.
Big time. All right, so you get your wood, and you got this is kind of an idea.
Yeah, sometimes I'll draw a picture on there if I have an idea what I want. The only thing I don't have to do this with is when I'm doing bears or chainsaw carvings. It's really hard to draw on a log.
Yeah.
And I can pretty much get a bear out of anything now. But when you do this stuff, I will get a drawing or a photograph, and I will either trace it or, which sometimes works better, I'll take it and have it photocopied and put on a sticky back paper, or I can use a spray adhesive, and I'll spray the adhesive and I'll put it on here, and then that gives me a guide. I'll cut it out with my bandsaw, so I don't have to worry about chiseling all that out. And then I three-dimensionalize it. I'll start by carving the hair back. You know, a person's face, if you look at a profile, it's kind of like a Z. So you have to take this material back, you have to take this material back, but you got to leave enough for the nose.
And then sort of
do it.
Customize it.
And then customize it from there. So this will be the lowest part of it, but it might come out, if you want the hair to come out like your hair, if you want the hair to come out on the shoulders, you'll want to get a little bit of a dip to it. Then your forehead, you will start with your forehead, where your eyebrows are going to, and your nose is going to stick out pretty much at the same
So like you
space.
said, three-dimensionalize it.
But you have to bring it in for the eyes and for the cheeks and for the nose, or for the upper part of the lip. And then you have to go in again for the neck. So you start.
Now, did you ever study for this, or you just worked it out as you went?
Well,
because I mean, it seems like there would be some math and obviously a lot of thought put into this.
When I started, the chainsaw carvings, I'm self-taught. I couldn't get it. Chainsaw carvers out west, there's a lot of them. And it's kind of like your favorite fishing spot. They're not going to tell you how to do anything because they don't want the extra competition. So, and they won't, if you watch them for too long, they'll put the chainsaw down and they'll actually stop working. So it was a kind of hit or miss thing, and it took me a while to get to know. But I was lucky enough to meet, like I said, my friend Rudy. And he didn't do chainsaw carvings, but he did stone sculptures. So I'd say, wow, that's kind of neat. How do you do that? So he would show me a little bit. And then the basic principles are the same. No matter what whether you're using clay or whether you're using wood, it's the tools that are different. You'll use tools like this for stone. You know, you'll use chisels like this for wood. For antler, you'll use air die grinder, which is similar to a Dremel. It's just a lot more powerful. And
this right here, this is a beautiful, this is an incredible piece. You actually, this is moose antler, and you actually did the buffalo inside there. So you carved all that out and then actually left that and then made the...
It starts out like this. Here's a piece of moose antler before I have done anything to it. Starts out like this. And then again, similar to on a piece of wood, I will either draw or put I usually draw it on a piece of paper for it first and then glue it on here. And then I will decide how much negative space, which is this area is in here, that I'm going to have, what kind of design it's going to be around the finished product. And I will cut that out on a jigsaw is actually what you call it. And I will cut it out with a jigsaw, and then that will leave the figure, which is like, if I can get this one again, I will show you. You look at the back of this, that's what it will leave. And then I take that, and then I will carve it, and I will carve in, just like I would do on the face, and detail it. And then it's still all attached to the antler. Now I've done, you can do something like this, or you can take this antler, which I've done before. Let me put this up again one more time. You can take this, I've done this, and I've carved this head into an eagle head, and maybe maybe carve feathers in here, maybe an extra eagle in there, and done stuff like that, or carve these into feathers.
You have a vision.
Yes, you have a vision, and they're all a little different. A few years back, actually, I won Best of Show in the Warren County Fair for an eagle carving like this.
It's not surprising at all. All right, give us a little demonstration. You brought some of your stone with you today.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the stones first. Well, stones, as the name implies, are hard, but there are different hardnesses in stone. Hardest, obviously, would be diamond, and then you have things like jade, which is extremely hard too. And then you get down to your softer stones, like this particular stone right here, which is heavy. If you follow, you'll see what I mean. It probably weighs 4 or 5 pounds. And this is soapstone. And as the name implies, it's soft, like soap. And it has, if you handle it, you'll feel your hands feel like they have soap on them.
They do.
And that's because it is basically, it's a talc material. And it is actually so soft, here if I can get my thing out here, that you can cut it with, you can carve it with a knife. You don't really need any special tools. A pen knife you can carve it with if you can get the chunk. But as you see,
I want you to look at that.
It'll just cut right down inside. And then if you touch it, or the thing, you'll see that it is. It's basically what they grind up to make talcum powder.
It's like a powder.
Yep, that's what it is. It might not be this particular type of soapstone, but it's soapstone in general is what they use.
That is amazing. See, now I never figured that you could carve a rock like that.
Yeah, most people are pretty shocked when you can see that.
I mean, it's a stone, it's a rock.
It's a rock, right. And so you'd think it would be really hard. This particular stone is called chlorite, and it comes from Northern California. And I actually dug this out of the ground myself. In fact, I brought a lot with me from California. This color, this greenish color, is because it's wet. As it dries out, because it was out in the rain the past couple of days, it gets a more of a grayish color. I didn't bring, it's not quite as gray as this limestone here, or this, but it, excuse me, it's kind of a dull gray, darker than your dress, but not quite this dark. But when you polish it up, if you polish it down to, you take like a 1200 grit sandpaper or something on, and you polish it down, it'll actually turn almost black. It's such a deep, deep green, it looks black.
Wow.
I have an eagle that I have done, it's about this big, and the whole body is carved into the top part of a body of an eagle coming out of a piece of stone. And the stone itself has, the body's been sandblasted, so it's that gray color. And then I have polished the beak, so the beak and the eyes are black. And everybody thinks it's been painted on.
Wow.
I have to explain to them.
Oh, I'll bet that's
now this is hard. This is harder than soapstone, but it's not as hard as like, let's say, jade. You can scratch it a little bit, make a little bit of cuts in it with a knife. And I'm not sure exactly whether it's a type of talc or not, but it does have garnets in it. And garnets are, as you know, are a semi-precious stone, and they're very hard on your tools. You know, if you're chiseling on it, it'll actually put a nick or wreck a bit if you happen to be using a rotary tool. And this is an interesting tool. I have some big pieces of this too that I brought with me from California. I brought pallets of, well, along with my furniture, I brought bunches of rocks. This is alabaster, just like this eagle here. This eagle is alabaster.
That is beautiful.
Alabaster comes in different colors.
See, now I always think exclusively of alabaster as this color.
As white, yes. Most people think of, because they use that, white alabaster.
Right.
But it doesn't. It comes in a variety of colors. This is a orange color alabaster. It also comes in a color they call root beer, and a few more different colors of gray, and a few different colors, and they have different veins in them. And this is not as hard as, say, marble, for instance. I don't have an example of marble here, but like the monument downtown, that's marble. That's a lot harder. You have to use diamond tools on it or carbide tools. It's a little bit different.
Because it would shatter.
Well,
in certain places where the veins run.
You can use the chisels and stuff. I mean, Michelangelo carved beautiful sculptures with copper chisels. It's just that you have to keep sharpening them all the time.
Right.
But this is probably just under, if I'm correct, and I'm not 100% sure of that, just a little bit below marble as far as the hardness goes.
Okay.
Now, when I carve a piece like this, I'll either use these chisels, which would be basically a hammer, and these are the three basic style chisels, a flat chisel, one like this with these teeth on it, it's kind of like a sawtooth chisel, and then this point. And these are the basic chisels that the Pieta was done with, or the David, or this type of chisel, except in copper. Now, when you start with a piece of stone, whether it's a piece of this or this or this or marble, you have to inspect the stone. You have to inspect the stone for, well, cracks, for the lack of a better word. See, if you look at the stone, can you see the crack in here? I don't know if your audience can see it. This right here, it goes like that.
Right.
Well, if I start chiseling on this to make something, there's a very good possibility that this will crack off and it'll become two stones. And that is the problem with carving with stone, is you might start out with one thing and end up with something else.
Oh, okay.
Or you have to really, really look for a solid piece that the whole thing is like this, where it doesn't have any of these.
So that way you could create what you actually started out to create.
Want to create.
Okay.
But as with carving, whether it's this or whatever, and especially with clay, there's no really mistakes. We just call them in the trade design changes. So this is basically really simple. You start picturing what it is that you want to get out of the stone. Everybody is maybe sitting at the dining room table and daydreamed and saw a pattern in the carpet, or a picture in a cloud. And they were doing that for years, even with the stars. So you do that. You take this piece and you look at it and you turn it around and you turn it around and try to think of what it is that you want to carve out of it. And then when you can see it in your mind, then you start whacking away at it to get rid of the stuff that's not supposed to be there.
Is that the technical term, whacking away?
Whacking away, that's the term I use. Michelangelo said that when somebody asked him about the David, how he was able to do that, and he said it was always there. He just removed the pieces that didn't belong. And that's pretty much every sculptor, whether he's a wood carver or he's a stone sculptor, will say the same thing. They use that quote quite often. Wow. It's a wonderful quote because it really is true. So you start out with a chisel like this, and you remove chunks of it until you get it down to what it is you're trying to cover. Like if you're going to do a bear, for example. You're going to do a bear, you have a round piece of rock here. You'll have to distinguish the ears. You have to get the forehead. You have to get the nose. You have to get the shape of the muzzle and the roundness of the head. So if I'm trying to think what I could carve, I haven't really seen anything in here yet to do. So it's a...
So you'll just kind of prep it? And
yeah, I'll just kind of prep it. I'll take off some of the pieces, like this, like this crack. Because then if I take that, if I work on that, I can tell whether it's going to break or not. And if it breaks in two,
oh yeah,
like that.
Boy, that would have been a shame to
right,
get
exactly.
in that.
Especially if I had the beginning of a face here or something.
Oh yeah.
And that's the kind of thing you have to look at.
Now on your wood,
that's a little different.
You were talking about the differences there, and your different tools like this for the wings. Would you use the one that looks like the little rake?
No.
Okay.
You use different tools
altogether. That's a rock tool, right?
That's a rock
These
tool.
are the
These
the
are wood tools. These are just a tiny amount of different kinds of chisels I have. I have probably 60 different chisels with different shapes and configurations. The best chisels, in my mind, are this particular type, and they say Swiss made on them, and they're, as the name implies, made in Switzerland. They're very expensive. They can range from $120 for one chisel to probably, I think the cheapest one's about $25. And that's for a really small chisel. And you can get cheaper chisels. Oops, excuse me. You can get cheaper chisels as well. You know, there's lots of different companies that make them. Marples is a company that makes them. Grizzly makes them. A lot of places make them. And then this is a piece of cypress as well. It's just like that one. In fact,
is just incredible.
I started that one pretty much the same time I started this one, but I got involved in doing other projects for other people, and most of my work is custom. So it's a work in progress that I haven't been able to get back to for a while. And what you do is you draw the picture, and this was a hand-drawn picture, and that was a hand-drawn picture.
Beautiful.
And again, I put it on the bandsaw, I cut out the big spots. But like here, here's a little, give you a little idea. Maybe use this to prop this up here. Well, actually, excuse me, I'll give this rock, maybe that'll help. Try to do that anyway. I usually use a sandbag, and that helps with the odd shapes. But if I'll take this as a pointer. Now this ribbon, obviously a ribbon just is not, in order to make it three-dimensional, you have to have the little flip in it. So this actually started out at this distance all the way across, and it was just a square, you know, just this basic shape. But in order to get it to look like it's twisting, you'll have to undercut it, and you have to round it at certain spots, and this is where your imagination comes in, or if you happen to have a photograph of something you can watch. And a lot of times I'll use models. Like sometimes I'll go to Tractor Supply. In fact, here's a good example. Christmas time, lady wanted a rooster. I hadn't carved a rooster before, but how hard would a rooster be? But I needed to have something to look at. So I went to Tractor Supply and got a little tiny model rooster and went from there. And she loved it, by the way.
Well, let me ask you this. If someone would like to get in touch with you about maybe commissioning a piece or just asking or seeing some of the pieces that you have already prepared, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I live on Shady Rest Road, which is across from the VFW in McMinnville. It's really easy to find. I'm the very first house on the right-hand side, first driveway on the right-hand side. It's up on top of a hill.
All right.
A lot of local people might remember it as the old Crawford place. It used to be called Crawford's Corner.
Okay.
I also have a boarding kennel for animals. It's also, Camp Critter is also there too, but it's the same driveway.
All right.
Anyway, I can be found there. You can reach me by my phone number, which is 931-808-7115.
Okay.
That's my cell phone. I have it with me all the time.
All right.
The only problem is since it's a cell phone, I don't have a listing in the phone book. So it's really hard to get in touch with me that way. But a lot of people in town do know me.
We'll find you that way.
And I drive, and a lot of people, if they don't know me, they know my truck. My wife says my truck looks like she says it looks like a Holstein cow because I have the bear prints on it.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been so much fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Well, that's our show for today. Very special thanks to our good guest, Tim Muscetta. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you would like to get in touch with us, you can email us at handmadetn@bltv.net or like us on Facebook at HandMade Tennessee. I'm Kimberly Vance, and I hope that you've been inspired to create your own HandMade Tennessee. If you enjoyed today's show, check us out on Facebook for other shows and information at www.facebook.com/HandmadeTennessee. You can also email us your comments or suggestions to handmadetn@bltv.net.